In a previous video, we explored the diverse and fascinating foods that made up the ancient Roman diet. Today, as a follow-up, we'll dive into the wide variety of drinks the Romans enjoyed, from their daily refreshments to the alcoholic beverages that played a central role in their culture. Naturally, the most prevalent drink in ancient Rome was water. In the urban centers, people typically drew water from wells or collected it in cisterns. In the countryside, it was sourced from springs, wells, and at times small rivers or streams. During the imperial period, great aqueducts supplied many major cities, primarily for bathhouses, but also for the numerous fountains that provided drinking water to the growing population. The Roman elite held melted snow in high regard, considering it one of the purest forms of water and frequently adding it to other drinks. Perhaps the most famous non-alcoholic Roman beverage was Posca, which in its simplest form was water mixed with vinegar. Although the exact ratio remains uncertain, estimates suggest it was likely between 1/10 and 2/10 vinegar. Posca was especially popular among the lower classes as well as soldiers and travelers, as it was a cheap and quite refreshing drink. Occasionally, it was flavored with salt, herbs, or honey. While dairy products like cheese were relatively common in the Roman diet, milk itself was not widely popular. It was primarily consumed by children, with only a few adults having a cup at breakfast, sometimes flavored with herbs. Sheep and goat milk were the most commonly drunk, while milk from horses, cows, and donkeys was much rarer. Interestingly, camel milk was particularly favored by the scholar Pliny, whose writings provide much of the information shared in this video. Due to its high cost, camel milk was considered a luxury reserved for a privileged few. Pliny mentions that it was usually drunk diluted with a large amount of water. Another dairy-based drink consumed by the Romans was a type of liquid yogurt called melka, derived from the Greek oxygala. It was made by combining fermented milk with fresh milk and was often seasoned with salt. In addition to the liquid form, there was also a thicker semi-solid version of melka, similar to modern strained yogurt. Both the Greeks and Romans consumed it regularly, often with herbs and spices. Now we come to the Romans' most cherished drink, wine. Though grapes had grown in Italy since the Neolithic and Bronze Ages, the practice of viticulture and winemaking was introduced by the ancient Greeks and Phoenicians during the Archaic period. By the early Republic, wine had become deeply woven into Roman life, shaping their diet, culture, economy, and religious practices. It was in fact so central to their identity that abstaining from wine was almost considered un-Roman. Wine production was a complex process, carefully tailored to the grape variety and the desired style of wine. Once picked, the grapes were crushed, with their skins left in the juice to allow the wild yeast on them to trigger fermentation. This natural process converted the sugars into alcohol, with fermentation taking place in large vats where the wine began to develop its flavor. Afterward, the wine was either stored in large vessels, often partially buried or kept in cool, sheltered spaces, or transferred into clay amphorae for transport. Depending on the type, some wines were filtered before being poured into the containers. Once filled, the containers were sealed and labeled with details such as the date, the producer's name, and the place of origin. Many wines were aged for extended periods, with older vintages being especially prized. While the ancient Greeks always diluted their wine with water, the Romans drank it both diluted and undiluted, though dilution was far more common, especially before the imperial era. The ratio varied, but wine was typically mixed with an equal amount of water, or even up to 3 parts water to 1 part wine. Beyond being a staple of social gatherings and leisure, wine also held deep religious significance and was used in libations. Additionally, it was frequently prescribed by physicians for its perceived medical benefits. Ancient Rome produced a vast selection of wines, ranging from white to deep red, each produced through distinct methods. Perhaps the most valued among them was Falernian or Falernum, a famous white or rosé wine made from grapes grown on the slopes of Mount Falernus, known for its exceptional quality. Unlike most wines, it was often consumed undiluted and was considered best after aging for 10 to 20 years. Another esteemed and costly wine was Calenum, a white variety made from large grapes. Lighter on the stomach, it was especially favored by the Roman elite. Spolentinum, a wine of similar esteem, was a sweet, golden-colored variety traditionally served diluted with water that had been boiled and then cooled in snow. A wine known as Passum was made from raisins and must and was famous for its intense sweetness. It was neither particularly expensive nor very cheap and was sometimes used as a sweetener in cooking. The finest Passum wines were said to come from Carthage, Crete, and Cilicia. For most people, everyday wine consumption consisted of inexpensive varieties, with finer wines reserved for special occasions. The inexpensive wines were typically produced in large vineyards near Rome and other major cities. They were not aged and were consumed within a year of production. Roman authors note that most slaves in Rome made and drank a type of wine called lora, created from the remnants of wine production. To make the beverage, they would press the leftover grape skins, boil the extracted juice with the skins, add salt, and mix it with water. An important feature of ancient Roman wines was the use of numerous additives, unlike most modern wines. These were used to enhance flavor or preserve the wine's quality. One popular wine, known as mulsum, was made by adding honey, either during fermentation or in some variations after the wine was produced. Common additives included spices such as pepper, saffron, and cinnamon, as well as herbs like rosemary, thyme, oregano, and fennel. Some wines were infused with resins like myrrh and pine resin, the latter being a common ingredient in many Greek wines. Additionally, seawater was often added during fermentation. Other additives included calamus, licorice, violets, roses, myrtleberries, celery, and almonds. Ingredients such as chalk, ash, egg whites, and gypsum were used to clarify cloudy wines and preserve them. The Romans also produced smoked wines, such as the Marsilitanum, which had a distinct, strong flavor that was balanced with sweeteners. When must wasn't fermented for winemaking, it was often boiled down into grape syrup, which was a popular sweetener. The Romans used syrups to enhance sauces and sweeten wine, but they also mixed them with water or vinegar to create refreshing drinks for children. Additionally, must was used in bread making as a leavening agent. Wines were also made from fruits other than grapes. The author Pliny referred to these as artificial wines, and they were commonly produced in the African and Asian provinces of the empire. Examples include wines made from dates, pears, figs, and apples. The Romans adopted the Greek belief that wine was the drink of the civilized world, while beer was associated with barbarians. As a result, wine dominated consumption in most of Italy, Greece, and Anatolia. However, in other Roman provinces, particularly Britain, Spain, Gaul, and Egypt, beer was the preferred beverage. Depending on the province, beer could be made from various grains such as wheat and rye, though it was mostly brewed from barley. The process began by soaking the barley in water, then drying it to create malt. This malt was then mixed with water and fermented. In Egypt, during fermentation, ingredients like date juice, honey, spices, and various fruits were often added for flavor. Beer at this time was much thicker than modern varieties, with a slightly lower alcohol content. It also did not have hops, which are used today to add bitterness and improve preservation. During the Roman period, the Spaniards created a method to age beer and developed a technique to keep it under pressure, resulting in the formation of foam. Liquor, a drink similar to beer, was primarily consumed by the lower classes, though it was not as common as beer. Made from husked, coarsely ground spelt and water, liquor had a low alcohol content. A drink frequently mentioned in ancient Roman texts was mead. Mead was made by fermenting a mixture of water, honey, and yeast. While it was more popular in the northern provinces, it was also consumed in Italy and other southern regions, though it was considered inferior to wine. Mead served both as a medicinal remedy and a refreshing beverage. Many preferred the simple version, while others enjoyed variations that included added fruit juices, flowers, or herbs.